you wouldn't believe how powerful it is for organizations once they make up their mind that from an employee experience perspective, they are going to ask people things before they tell them. And it goes back to what I said earlier about you leveraging the power of the community to problem solve together. The most nimble, successful organizations are the ones that have that regular feedback loop with their people, and especially the people talking to the customers, right? Marketing doesn't have a corner on all the great ideas. If you're listening to your customer or listening to people talking to your customers, you're going to hear really candid stuff that you don't get in focus groups, that you don't get in market research. And that's going to help you iterate, and it's going to help you be better. So asking in a structured way, asking is risky. If you ask and you gather input, but you don't have a built-in mechanism to respond, it's really dangerous, okay? If you open up the can of worms to ask, and you're not willing to follow through and show people tangible steps that you've taken to implement ideas that you heard or address some of the things you heard, that's why employee engagement surveys are in some cases, they blow up in companies' faces because they're not prepared to really turn around a good follow-up plan in a timely way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Open Source Workplace interview series. Today, I'm very pleased to have Chris Wallace with us. He's a marketing entrepreneur. And we're going to dig in, we're going to find out a little bit more about Chris. But before we get to that, if this is the first time you've come across our video, please subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you get notifications for future episodes that we bring to you. So with that said, Chris, how are you doing? Nice to have you on the video.
I'm doing great, Steve. Thank you so much for having me join you today.
No, thank you. So Chris, you live in Philadelphia. What do you do? What do you want the viewers to know a little bit about you?
A little bit about me. Well, I'm a Northeasterner through and through. Whether that makes you like me or not, I don't know. But I'm from upstate New York originally, but love Philadelphia. I think that Philadelphia is one of the really underrated cities in the United States. And I think, in terms of what to know about me, there's really only a couple things. I'm a very proud Syracuse University graduate. Usually people learn that in the first 20 seconds of knowing me, but I'm really passionate about a lot of things, but really passionate about my work. I throw myself into the things that I spend my time on, and my business. Very passionate, love what I do, never want to do anything else, and hopefully that will come through in the conversation today.
No, I'm sure you've kept your record within 20 seconds. You did tell everyone you went to Syracuse, so there you go. There you go.
Bleed orange. I bleed orange.
And going by your history, I'm also going to guess you're a golf fan as well.
I really enjoy the game of golf. I was actually just with some of my advisors. I'm playing golf with my partner and two of our advisors on Monday in a charity outing that I'm involved with. And I love to play golf. I have a history of working in the golf industry. And I have a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, so I don't play very much. But I'm trying to get them involved so I can play more golf.
Very good, very good. And one other thing I noticed when I did my research on you was your participation in Big Brother. You've been in there for a long time. It's a great organization. How did you get involved in that?
So Big Brothers Big Sisters is actually the golf tournament that I'm playing in on Monday. So we're my company's sponsor this year. We're sponsoring the keynote speaker for the evening. But I got involved through a previous employer. They were big sponsors, and one of the executives sort of handed me the reins for his involvement. He'd been involved for a number of years and was extremely busy and not being able to give the time that he wanted. So I've been on Big Brothers Big Sisters Independence region, which is Philadelphia and South Jersey. I've been on their golf committee for I believe this is my 10th or 11th year, and like you said, an amazing organization. Really proud to be involved every single year. The fundraiser we do is the organization's largest of the year, and they end up funding, I'll do some quick math, I think they end up funding as many as 200 individual mentor and mentee relationships every year just from the golf tournament.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well done, you. That's great. That's great. So as you sort of try to dig into your professional side, what do you think came first, marketing or entrepreneurship for you?
Oh man, you started out with a tough question.
There you go, man.
I'm going to say, I'm probably going to say marketing. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I think I have a a sales, marketing, business development brain. I would say by trade, but it's more by birth than anything else. But I'm going to say marketing first, because I think the entrepreneur thing, I never fancied myself an entrepreneur. It all kind of happened by accident. So I'll go with sales and marketing as being in my DNA.
And how did that accident then happen? Because you've done it once or twice.
So the accident was I was climbing the corporate ladder inside a really large organization, great company. And the division that I was in, the company made a very large acquisition. And we were a small part of what was going to be a big organization. And even though my company did the acquiring, my division was going to get folded in with the new property that they bought. And it was going to require a relocation to a place that my family and I didn't really want to relocate to. And what ended up happening was, through that whole process, I ended up leaving a full-time role, taking some gig work. The gig work was going well. And the next thing I knew, I had a company. So I sort of almost had a client before I had a company, but it gave me the opportunity to sort of incubate an idea.
Great. I think that's how it happens for a lot of people. You know, I actually think the most startups happened actually whenever 2008, right? When a lot of people get laid off, because all of a sudden they had all these, you know, this time on their hand to do the things that they actually wanted to love to do. So I think that's sort of what happens. Not that was your case, but it's whenever people have the time and the freedom, I think that's whenever those sort of things start. And so you then start InnerView Group. And what was the genesis of that? Because it's a very interesting tack you've taken.
So InnerView Group is really the culmination of, you mentioned, I've done this a few times before in the entrepreneurial space. My first, call it the accidental company, when I started my first company, which was Insight Sales Consulting, we found ourselves in a spot where we were working with sales teams in large organizations. And the approach that we took and the methodologies that we used and the places we were seeing success, what really ended up happening was, what we were good at and the opportunities that we were seeing in front of us were two different things. And we found ourselves in a spot where we were pitching business around how we could help sales teams, but then they heard the kind of the how. They got the peek under the curtain. And a lot of those sales organizations were like, no, we just want training. And we're like, well, we don't do training. Like, if you want training, go work with one of these sales training companies. And we were losing deals to great sales training companies like Richardson and Miller Hyman and companies like that. And we're like, that's not what we do. And after we had built Insight to a certain point, and we actually we merged with another firm, a larger firm. And after a couple of years of trying to integrate the businesses, we realized that we had gone so far down a path of having the right conversation, but having it with the wrong prospect, the wrong buyer, that we decided it was time to sort of walk away and start fresh. And that's what InnerView is. InnerView is a reflection of starting fresh.
Great. Now, I know InnerView is all about the branding internally, right? And it's a fascinating piece, and it's something that really I don't think a lot of people are familiar with. So what actually is the internal branding that needs to happen, and why is that message that leadership need to know with the external and also internal people? What is that message, and why does it need to be different, if it does at all?
I think the best way to describe that is to use some real life examples. Okay. For anybody that's ever seen a car ad in their newspaper or on TV and walked into that car dealership and said, I'm interested in this car. I saw the ad. I saw this lease special. And the person that you're talking to gives you that blank stare. And they're like, I don't know if we're participating in that, or I'm not familiar with that. Where did you see it? You have immediately caused a disconnect between the car brand that is out there trying to drive demand and the customer who is looking for an experience that matches what they were promised. And organizations spend so much money to whatever the number is. I think it's I actually think it's, as of 2017, it was $216 billion on marketing and advertising. Okay. So a couple $100 billion being spent to drive demand. But what's happening when those people show up and what they were told through the marketing and the advertising doesn't match up with the experience that they're having, whether it's in a retail showroom or in somebody in a call center? If those things don't match up, that misalignment is really impactful to brands. It hurts brands significantly. So our job as an organization is to really build that brand alignment between the external messaging and the external promises and the actual experience that customers have. And if the people talking to the customers don't know what is being delivered via marketing or aren't bought in to what's being delivered via marketing, that disconnect is bound to happen.
So why does that disconnect happen? Because obviously the external marketing is going out, and probably the same messaging isn't being delivered, or is it being delivered? I mean, what are you finding? Why is that message not communicated internally?
The best way I can think to describe it is this. When the organization is delivering, and we have data to support this, and I can share some of the statistics, but when an organization is trying to reach their buyer, they're trying to make that emotional connection with their buyer. They're trying to get the buyer to say, this is worth my time, my effort, my dollars. And it really is, they're trying to win hearts and minds through the marketing. They're trying to drive certain behaviors. Yet when organizations try to take that same message and deliver it to their own people, they take a very different approach. Rather than trying to win the hearts and minds and convince their own people of how great something is, not everything, but most organizations take a compliance-based approach. It's take the training, here's the script, go say this. And they sort of miss the step of, you can tell them what to say and tell them their job depends upon it, but if they don't actually believe in it, they're not going to say it consistently, they're not going to say it with conviction, and they're not going to make that emotional connection with the customer when they show up. So we really believe that if you're going to invest the time and effort and energy to win the hearts and minds of your customers, why would you not make frankly, a much smaller investment, a fraction of that investment, to get the people interacting with your customers to the same point of engagement with the brand? So it's just a difference of approaches. They're trying to do two different things. They take two different approaches. We believe very strongly that the methodologies that companies use to reach customers are the same ones they should be using to reach their own people. So
same methodology, different message, or the same message?
Similar messages. I think that they can be packaged in different ways. Use go back to the auto example. The message for a service person, somebody that works the service counter, is a little bit different than the message from the person who works the sales floor. They're all tied back to the same brand principles, and they should always be tied back to the same brand principles. But how an employee articulates the brand and how the customer hears it through advertising and marketing, there's a little bit of a translation process that needs to happen. You can't just take what's on the billboard, walk it into the showroom, and hand it out to the people in the auto dealership. There's a little bit of a translation that needs to happen so they understand what role they play in delivering that same message. One message, but sort of through a couple of different filters. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
No, it does. And I sort of think through my own thinking, my own psychology as well. So and to be fair to the, any internal comms team, usually whenever they send a message to employees, it's often not read or adhered to, or, so how do they fix that?
So great question. So I mentioned the research that we did. We partnered with a consumer insights and data research company called Focus Vision. They're a large player in gathering, a customer market research with big companies. We partnered with them to find out what companies are actually doing, right? You're spending a lot to know what your customer wants, right? You want to understand your customer really well. And that's what Focus Vision does. We asked executives across marketing, product, and customer experience, how are you taking that message and getting it out to your people? And you want to know what the two highest responses were? Email and product training. Okay.
And so what was the second one?
Product training.
Product training. Okay.
So we do trainings and we send emails. And what we found, though, was the companies who believe that they're doing a good job of building that alignment with their brand internally, it actually turned out that the tactics that over-indexed that were actually working, the ones that were actually driving better alignment in their organization, weren't email and product training. So it is a challenge. And I think that organizations have to ask themselves, is the information that we're sending, and believe me, I think there's a place for internal communications, and we work with internal communications teams. Internal communications is an information vehicle. It is delivering information, but that expects that people are going to take information, process it, internalize it, and really determine for themselves how they're going to use it and sort of relay that to the customer in their own way, that's a lot of processing, translating, and digesting that they're leaving to the employee. We step in and help do that for them. We sort of pick up where a lot of the communications and training ends, that's information driven, and we pick up with a more experiential approach, things that are going to help them digest the information in a much different way.
So what would be the key things that you would add to that message then?
So I'll give you a great example. So one of our clients, very large sales force, distributed across the country, several hundred people, and they were rolling out a brand new initiative. We asked their sales team, how do you like to consume information? And they said, please, please, please don't make me sit on another webinar. Please don't make me sit on another webinar. And we said, okay, they don't want a webinar. But what type of information do you want? And they said, well, I want this and I want this. I want Mythbuster type stuff. So we asked them what they were looking for. And instead of sending an email or doing another webinar, we built a podcast series. So we took this group of people that are out calling on their customers every day, and they're out there, they're out on the road. They don't want to be chained to their desk. So we gave them a vehicle to interact with the information on their terms, on their time, in a way that was actually going to help them. And by the way, the topics of the podcast were sourced from them. We asked them what they wanted to hear. We weren't just telling them what corporate thought they needed to hear. We were asking them what they wanted. And the podcast series became a really effective way for them to spend 15 minutes in their car to digest a couple of pieces of information, sort of chunks at a time. We didn't try to tell them the whole thing all at once. That's why we did it over a series of different episodes.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And it's everything we try to do. If you just answer questions, you provide people with very direct answers. That's really cool. Now, is every company the same? Do you find that works for everybody? Or do you have to change the approach for different organizations?
Every organization is a little bit different, right? And they have different roles. They have different people that are out there interacting with their customers on a day in, day out basis. So, but this is where, one of the reasons I was so excited to join you on the open source workplace is this idea of soliciting input, using the power of the community to solve problems, as opposed to, there's not a corner on the market of good ideas at corporate offices. Most people know that. I once had a head of learning and development for a very large a public company say to me, why don't we just get everybody in a room and tell them exactly what to do and say? And my reaction to him was, how do you know you're right? How do you know what you're telling them to say is the right thing? Involve them in that process. Ask them what they need. Ask them what they think. Ask them what they've heard, and use that information as fuel for your program and a way to get them engaged, as opposed to treating them like subjects. People don't want to be treated like subjects. They don't like scripts. Scripts don't work.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I'm a big believer as well in we're not always right, even though we may think we are, but yeah. So obviously someone wants to participate in this, or, what's the value proposition for getting that internal communication right? I always look at everything that I do. Okay, there's an input, there's an output. So the input, what's the ROI on that input, right? So
yeah,
what do leadership get? What do employees get? Because there's two different perspectives in actually getting that right.
Awesome question. Yeah. So the way we look at it is this: it's actually not a hard equation at all. The fundamental belief here is if the marketing team has built the brand based on what they know of the customer's needs, right? They've built their value proposition as a company. They've built a set of promises as a company based on what they need to deliver and what their customers want. Okay. The higher percentage of the time that their frontline team is on message for that same story, that they've spent so much money to research and craft and advertise, the higher percentage of the time that people are on brand and on message, the higher percentage of the time they are delivering their value proposition in a differentiated way. If they can do that even a little bit more frequently than they are currently, they're going to win more deals. You're going to convey that message of value and win more deals. I'll give you a specific example. We worked with a client that's in the luxury goods space. They're in the jewelry space. And they had a customer experience, and they had a model that they had, and it was all about following the customer, see what the customer wants. But they have a brand that was built on some different principles. And we sat in between their brand and what the way they design their customer experience, and we figured out how to connect those two things in a stronger way, right? Their sales conversion went up by 33%.
Wow.
Simply by them getting on the phones and really hunkering down and delivering this message of, we're the experts. We're going to help you get where you need to go because we are diamond jewelry experts. We're going to give you the right answers. By them doubling down on their brand, their conversion, and this wasn't a small sample size, this was through their telephone, their call center channel, their sales conversion went up 33%. And it was all about just getting them in better aligned with their brand and understanding all the messages that were going out via digital, via cable TV ads. By getting all those things aligned, they were able to close sales at a 33% higher clip. So sales conversion, upsell rates, cross-sell rates, average order value. We want to focus on very tangible metrics. For the companies we work with, a couple percentage points of improvement is a lot of money. Yeah. A lot of money.
Yeah. And is it just specifically sales and front of house employees that it impacts, or is there other people you think it impacts as well?
So our primary focus is on those customer touch points. So the answer is it impacts, it can impact everybody throughout an organization. And we've done engagements where it wasn't just the frontline people. I can tell you it's easier to measure. It's just easier to measure. It's a little bit more tangible. That's why we focus on it. But you asked earlier what it does for the employee as well. So we look at it as our job is to, if we can get the employees aligned with and excited about the brand that they represent, we've put them in a position to serve the customer better and perform better. If they're serving their customers better and they're performing better, they are happier. They're more satisfied in their role. They get more actualization out of what they're spending their day doing than they did before. So we really believe that there's really a trickle-down benefit of put them in a position to succeed and represent that brand in a differentiated way, and they're going to be happier in their role as a result. I think that there's a little bit different approach that the traditional quote-unquote employee engagement model would take, but we really believe put them in a position to serve their customers to the best of their ability and tell a really compelling story. They're going to be happier in their jobs.
No, I
so
think
retention.
Anyone who's performing well actually feels better, self-motivated. And you touched on employee engagement, and the question, like, do you think employee engagement really matters?
I absolutely think employee engagement matters. I think that there's a few different ways to skin the cat. We look at it as there's different ways to measure employee engagement, and there are things like employee engagement surveys and things like that. I think employee engagement is kind of built on the premise of if you can make people happier in their roles, they're going to serve their customers better. And I think that that's true. I think they're pushing from one direction, we're pushing from the other direction. We look at it as put them in a position to perform better, and they're going to be happier in their job, as opposed to focus on the happiness and have the happiness sort of seep out. Brands are powerful things. And if you get people really bought in, really dialed into the brand that they represent and excited about it, we believe that has implications for employee engagement. But at the end of the day, if they're doing good work and they feel good about the company that they work for, they're going to stay longer. You talked about how do you measure it on their side. We typically don't look at employee satisfaction as we don't judge ourselves that way, but we will look at retention because retention has real dollar implications for an organization. We once did work for a client that had one of their sales channels had a 96% annual turnover rate.
Wow.
96%.
Wow.
They said, if you can come in and build some connection to this brand for us, and people stay 45, 60 days longer than they do right now, their chances of staying in this role go up exponentially. Just save our people from leaving. And it paid off big time for them.
Wow, that's incredible. Well done. Wow. 96%.
96%.
Wow.
And they're not alone, by the way. Retail has really high turnover. Frontline technical roles, customer service, they all have really high turnovers.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And you touched on the surveys. Yeah, I'm a little skeptical how much weight we can actually put on an engagement score, a survey score, but you did touch on that. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So as you think about, you're an entrepreneur, you're a marketer, you run this organization, whenever you think about workplace productivity and maximizing your employee experience, what are the key things that you've learned in your time, and what are the things that you try to do within your organization to maximize those two things?
Ask. One word. I mean, ask, don't tell. I mean, I think that the best way, and one of the reasons I was so excited to have this conversation, Steve, is I really believe that you wouldn't believe how powerful it is for organizations once they make up their mind that from an employee experience perspective, they are going to ask people things before they tell them. And it goes back to what I said earlier about you leveraging the power of the community to problem solve together. The most nimble, successful organizations are the ones that have that regular feedback loop with their people, and especially the people talking to the customers, right? Marketing doesn't have a corner on all the great ideas. If you're listening to your customer or listening to people talking to your customers, you're going to hear really candid stuff that you don't get in focus groups, that you don't get in market research. And that's going to help you iterate, and it's going to help you be better. So asking in a structured way, asking is risky. If you ask and you gather input, but you don't have a built-in mechanism to respond, it's really dangerous, okay? If you open up the can of worms to ask, and you're not willing to follow through and show people tangible steps that you've taken to implement ideas that you heard or address some of the things you heard, that's why employee engagement surveys are in some cases, they blow up in companies' faces because they're not prepared to really turn around a good follow-up plan in a timely way.
No, it's great. And you actually took away my next question, because I was going to say, so what happens if you hear something you don't want to hear, or you hear something and you have to follow up with that, right? And it's not so much even if you don't want to hear it, it's more if how do you react to it, and you touched on that too. You have to have a plan. No, it's really important, and that's something we haven't heard before. So thank you for sharing that. So Chris, this is obviously where we're going to come to an end. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to mention, you want to raise before we finish up here?
I just like to make one point to the last bit here in the conversation about asking. One of the things that we do at InnerView is we have a tool that we've built called the brand transfer study. And what the brand transfer study does is it takes the brand and it takes the value proposition. And we ask the corporate team and the brand builders, and it could even include their agencies, how they view the brand. And then we ask the people at the front lines how they view the brand. And we do a data analysis of the two sets of responses to determine how far apart they are, right? How much of the message is breaking down from one to the next. The reason I bring that up is because I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they said, my CMO doesn't want to do a brand transfer study. And I said, why do they not want to do it? They're a partner of ours. I said, why don't they want to do it? And they said, because they're afraid of how bad we're going to be. And when you think about what you're trying to do with employee experience in the open source workplace, and what we're trying to do and where those overlap points are, you can't be afraid to hear the truth, right? The organization of the future, the organization that is going to engage employees and provide that employee experience that's next level, next generation, those are the people that want to hear the bad stuff. They want to hear the bad news. They want to dive into that data and say, where are we missing something? Where's the disconnect? Because that just creates a new opportunity to make something better. And the organization that's going to succeed and thrive are the ones that want to hear bad news. So when you talk about the engagement surveys and things like that, I think any input from your employees is very good and very useful, but you have to be willing to act on it, and you have to want to hear the bad news. You have to be willing to hear the bad news, or else don't even bother. Don't waste your money.
No, thank you, Chris. That was great. Thank you. And so I just want to say thank you to Chris again. And if you have any questions for Chris or for put them down in the question comments below, and we'll be sure to circle back with any responses. So once again, Chris, thank you, and we will catch up with everybody very, very soon. Thank you. Take care.
Steve, thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you.
Take care.